Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another edition and episode of the Fantasy Inferno. Thanks for being here. I am Rob Sullivan. I'm your host this evening. You can find me over on Twitter at RotoHeat Sully. I also hang out in our Facebook communities, both the Redraft Facebook community, the RotoHeat community, as well as our Dynasty community. And you can find me on our Discord chat at Sully. I am pleased to be joined this evening by 2/3 of the show you watch on Monday nights, the IDP Heat Seekers. I'm joined by Kraig and Brad. Gentlemen, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. Thanks so much for being here. And Mr. Menendez, the Iron Man, how are you?
Oh, just wonderful. I am feeling not so irony, a little more soft and doughy. How are you?
Okay. I'm good, man. I am really good. So tonight we are going to do a mock draft, a redraft mock draft. Probably do 2 to 3 rounds of the mock draft this evening. I have to do my best to convince my 2 IDP specialists not to draft defenses. We'll see how that goes. And we're also joined by our regular co-host, Bryce Frazier. Bryce, thanks for being here. How you doing, brother? Thanks for being here.
Pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. Just got back home from work, so I'm
awesome.
ready.
Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. So we're just kind of chatting off the top. Tonight's a redraft. We're going to do maybe 2 to 3 rounds of the redraft. We'll see how that goes. We'll kind of play it by ear. If you have some questions, if you're watching us over on YouTube or on Facebook, by all means, drop some questions in there. We'll get to them a little bit later in the program, and we certainly do appreciate your questions. So we'll start off this evening with a little bit of news and notes kind of going on around the league. News dropped late this morning in my time zone that Miles Sanders has sustained an injury in training camp and that he is week to week. So Bryce, what do you think? Does that change your thoughts on Miles Sanders? Are you going to move him around in your rankings? And does that make you think more than ever that the Eagles are going to bring somebody into camp?
Well, it doesn't really change my thoughts on him because I believe that he was my overrated, one of my overrated candidates this year. But it definitely, I think, even though I thought he was overrated, I didn't think he was irrelevant. I thought he was a good player to have, maybe more as a running back 2 value, like a mid to low end. So yeah, he's probably going to bump down in my rankings, especially being week to week. Because if someone comes in and gets an opportunity to shine and they show the coaches something, I would be afraid that already split backfield could add another person into the mix. Brad, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Philadelphia be one of those teams that sometimes guys come out of nowhere, the Boston Scots, Corey Clements of the world, and that really drives you nuts as a fantasy owner. I still expect Miles Sanders to get, the heaviest load of all these guys as long as he's healthy. Now, it's something to monitor. If he continues to tweak and it gets worse throughout the year, I mean, that's just going to make trouble for your weekly starting situation. So, I'm cautious, but still optimistic because Sanders is clearly the guy they want to be the guy. What do you think, Kraig?
Yeah, coach speak this time of year, you always have to take with a grain of salt or a full salt shaker with some of these. But Peterson actually coming out and saying a couple of days ago that he was planning on being the guy was a different stance than they've taken in the past. So I do think, assuming he's healthy, he's going to be the primary guy there. It could lead to something where someone like Clement eats into more of it if he would show up great in camp. But I'm not bumping him down much farther than where I had him already, unless something changes.
Yeah, I redid my rankings recently, and I have him at 6 in my redraft rankings. I think he's probably going to slide maybe a spot or 2. The problem is I believe I have CEH kind of at 8, and I don't even like him at 8, so I don't want to move him up any higher. So I might leave Sanders there. I'm not too sure, but I agree. I think he is definitely their primary ball carrier if he's healthy and he can get on the field. And I keep hearing that voice inside my head talk about Devonta Freeman and is he's still out there and could he surface? Could he play? I don't know. And I'd say if there was a door that's going to open for him, this one's it. He's an easy guy to bring in, especially in camp. And if things happen, then you can always walk away from him because it's going to be a nothing deal. So we will continue to monitor that, as Brad said. And in San Francisco earlier this week, Jalen Hurd, who had some hype building on him, apparently has torn his ACL. So, Kraig, what do you think that means for the rest of the San Francisco passing attack? And is there anyone in a redraft league you could see yourself chasing? to draft.
This is one of those situations where you really wish there was a real sort of preseason to see how these guys do. With Debo injured, and then not only is Hurd out for the year, but someone else they had brought in, Travis Benjamin, had opted out. So what had been a huge cluster is starting to narrow down. So you probably see who the more likely options are going to be early in the year. And I'd probably move up. If I moved up anyone in my rankings, it'd be the rookie Brandon Ayuk, because it seems like he's showing well so far, and I had him lower probably than most people going into the draft and even coming out of it, just because I still don't think San Francisco passing attack is amazing. But he's a guy right now that I see probably taking advantage of that.
Yeah, definitely not somebody, a position group I'm super interested in other than Debo. And Ayuk, I'm not drafting most likely unless it's super late, especially in redraft formats. Debo slides down a few rounds just because we know he's going to be out for a few weeks, and there's so many talented wide receivers in redraft right now that you can look elsewhere. And if the guys fall far enough, the value's there, take them. What do you think, Bryce?
Yeah, the 49ers offense, for being like an elite team in the NFL, they're not very exciting, other than George Kittle. And arguably Mostert, but even then, that's not someone extremely high on a lot of people's radar. So Jalen Hurd, it's more sad just to see a young guy get hurt than anything. And that I'm kind of wondering how they would have felt if they were able to keep Emmanuel Sanders, because he would have been kind of a interesting guy, because he's very consistent, I feel like, when he's in the right system and on the field a lot. That 49ers team is wishing they would have maybe were able to re-sign him, but I'm just kind of seeing who kind of takes the reins over there, other than Kittle. So I don't really see myself drafting any 49er receivers, though. Nobody's on my radar personally. What do you think, Sully?
I agree with you, gentlemen. I think it's very interesting. I think when you back out Debo Samuel from that offense from a year ago, Kendrick Bourne, I believe, is the next highest in targets. Kyle Juszczyk is right there. Coleman. So I do see this as a team. I think they're the only team in the league last year to run the ball more than they threw it. So if their defense can hold up and perform like it did last year, I can see them kind of going with that approach as well. I think it's bad news for George Kittle. Like, could have 5 guys covering him at one single time. Like, it's an exaggeration, but it's the fact that who the heck are you going to cover in that offense? And you gentlemen know more about the defensive side than I do, but it seems to me like that division has really bolstered themselves. Either it's Arizona through the draft or it's Seattle through trade to combat and cover that gentleman when they play him. So could be interesting there. Kendrick Bourne is maybe a late flyer, but I agree with Craig. If there's anyone, it's Brandon Ayuk, and he's probably dropping in. Maybe his ADP will soar now, but I would say, 12th, 13th round, maybe I'll take a flyer on him there. And I'd be a rude host if I didn't have a defensive question for these fine gentlemen today. So word on the street is the Jags are close to trading their franchise tagged defensive end Yannick Ngakoue. Did I say that right, first of all?
Pretty close.
Yeah.
All afternoon I've been practicing that. So do you think he gets traded, first and foremost? And where's the most logical place for him to go? I believe his tag amount is about $19.3 million. So I'm not really sure who would be interested and or who could afford him at this time. So I'll leave it to you, Brad, to start us off on that one.
What I heard recently was the Jets were heavy in conversation, because they've dumped a lot of money here recently, trading Adams and Mosley sitting out, opting out. I feel bad for Ngakoue if he goes to the Jets, because it's kind of a dumpster fire. He'll get plenty of action, but who knows what they're going to do with him, because, in Jacksonville, he's more of a 4-3 edge guy, where the Jets kind of deploy more of a 3-4 front. They'll try to get him to attack more because he's better at rushing the passer than he is much else. When it comes to your team defense, the Jaguars are going to take a hit regardless if they move him, because then Josh Allen's kind of the only guy who's really good at getting to the passer, and he's only in his second year, so there'll be a sophomore slump. The Jets, their defense is going to be a waiver wire defense most of the season anyway. So, if you're in a redraft where you're doing, the kickers and defense like a lot of them do, neither of these defenses are going to excite you a whole lot. But Craig, what do you think?
Yeah, for the Jets, and it's the same sort of thing where I don't know if he really fits what's going on there. The fact that he's a younger guy, he's got a lot of talent. You'd think they'd want to be building off of that, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go get him after you get rid of someone like Adams, in my mind, because it's just another guy who's going to be really good that wants to go out and win a title, and that franchise is just stuck in the mud. Another one that I thought of, and I hadn't seen a whole lot of talk about, but Miami makes a lot of sense to me because they don't have a ton on their defensive line, and they have all sorts of picks to throw out towards the Jacksonville's way, and Jacksonville clearly is still building with their rebuild right now. So, and I'll throw it out there, I'm not advocating for it by any means, but it wouldn't be surprising me if the Patriots pulled some funny stuff with their money to find a way to go get him, because especially next year they're going to have a ton of money if they were able to re-sign him or trade for him and sign a trade of some sort and then push that money farther out. So I could see Belichick doing that if he was given the option.
That'd be sweet.
I just need the Vikings to figure out how to move some money around, but that's not going to happen.
They keep giving it to Kirk.
Yeah, totally. Don't get me started on that. And sticking with the Vikings for our last little bit of news and notes, it sounds like the contract talks between Dalvin Cook and the Minnesota Vikings have broken off. Myself, I'm not overly concerned about it. I think, Dalvin's going to play out this season, and then we'll see where the chips fall. And I do ultimately think that, Spielman and Zimmer really like the kid, and they'll get a deal done there. But if you're heading into your draft and you're about to be on the clock in the mid or early first round, are you worried about Dalvin Cook because of his contract, or are you just worried about Dalvin Cook for all the other reasons you should be worried about Dalvin Cook? Bryce?
I'm not worried about Dalvin Cook. Didn't he state that he has no plans or never even thought about holding out? I believe I read that he said that. And if he has more incentive now to produce than ever, he should have a big year. I made a bold. I think I told you, Sully. I think another little bold take was that I wouldn't be surprised if Dalvin Cook was number one in fantasy in the running back area, but just because he's got the talent, they feed him the ball and he could do it everywhere. Again, the only concern with him is obviously his injury history, but if he stays healthy, he's definitely one of my favorite backs this year. That wouldn't surprise me of ending at the top of the list. So, what do you think, Craig?
I think it's similar, not so much with the other injury concerns, but with Zeke and the Cowboys the other year when, everyone was in uproar, probably around the same time of year, when they were saying, oh my God, is he going to hold out? And you got to go get Pollard and all this sort of stuff. I'm not really concerned about it either. I do have questions if the Vikings are committed to signing him long-term. I don't know why they wouldn't be unless this price tag really is too high for them, and we know how running backs are. Maybe it's smart not to give him a ton of money on a contract, but for this year, I don't really have any concerns, no.
Brad? I'm not necessarily concerned about him per se this year, but, the dude's never really been a guy that I've been super interested in trying to acquire or draft and redraft. I haven't had a share of, because he's good, but, Minnesota's offensive line is notoriously terrible. He's never had more than, 4.8 yards per carry, and that was in his rookie year where he played 4 games. So the numbers are kind of skewed there. When you look at I want consistency. If I'm spending a first or second round pick, especially in redraft on a running back, I need to know this guy's going to play at least 14 games. And that he did play 14 last year. I'll give it to him. He was healthy last year. But they lose a guy like Stephon Diggs. You're working in young guys like Irv Smith and Jefferson and some of these. I feel like defenses are going to, we have to worry about Dalvin Cook because we know Thielen's older and he hasn't wowed us. He hasn't, he produced a couple, 300 or 400 yards games in the last, I'm sure Sully's got the numbers, but Thielen hasn't really been a factor enough to scare defenses. So Cook is going to get targeted. The offensive line is young. There's a couple of young pieces there, Bradbury and some of those guys, but there's just so much room for defense to go, listen, we're going to focus on Cook, and they're going to have to beat us through the air with the young guys or the old guys. And a lot of teams are built to be able to, to hang with these guys. So I'm concerned enough that I probably won't own a share of Cook again this year, but he's so talented. Like, he's one of those guys I wish he was on another team because he could be something special. Well, guy in the NFC North. I hate the Vikings, so it doesn't matter. I want everyone off their team.
I'd hate your team too, but
they don't ever win, so what's the hate?
I think Thielen, year before last, the first 10 games of the season, if I'm not mistaken, had over 100 yards receiving.
Yeah, he almost broke a record.
I don't think he has since.
I don't think
I know he was about wide receiver 9 when he got hurt last year, but it was on the strength of touchdowns. I don't think it was on the strength of yards. So, all right. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you. Please like us, subscribe to us, click that notification bell. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we do live streams 4 nights a week right now, soon to be 5. We'd love for you to be here. Tell your friends. If you're watching over on Facebook, or if you're watching this back later on YouTube, or even listening on your favorite podcast platform, liking and subscribing is very much appreciated. And if it's a podcast, feel free to leave us a review. We'd love that as well. So moving into tonight's meat of the episode, like I mentioned, we're going to do a mock draft. So we're going to do a modified, somehow 12-team mock draft with 4 guys. So we're going to base this on PPR scoring, and the roster will be 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, 2 flex. We'll sadly leave the defenses and the kickers to the side for this evening. We randomly selected the order. We're going to start off with Kraig, and then we're going to follow it up with Bryce, myself, and Brad, and we're going to snake it. So, Kraig, my friend, you're on the clock.
Yeah, so for me, there's really 2 options that you have here, and I don't think you can go wrong either way, so I'm not going to belabor the point. I like McCaffrey in terms of what volume I think he's going to get in the passing and running combined, a little bit more than Barkley this year. So McCaffrey's my pick, but if someone else went with Barkley there, I wouldn't begrudge him a bit.
All right. Bryce, that takes us to you, my friend.
Yeah, he explained it perfectly. The 1 and 2 spot are the easiest for me because I think these 2 dudes are interchangeable. So Barkley is definitely going to be my pick, and it seems almost like a no-brainer as well.
Cool. I think now that I'm up on the clock, for those that are participating in redrafts this year, this is probably how 99% of your drafts are going to go, unless you have something that's a little crazy out there. For me, I'm going to take a guy, another running back that I feel is in a tier of his own. I agree with both of your picks at 1 and 2. I earlier had Saquon at 1 and then flipped him back to 2, and I think you can't go wrong, like Kraig said. But I'm going to take Ezekiel Elliott of the Dallas Cowboys. I think he's in a tier of his own and volume alone, and I love that offense this year, so that is my pick.
Well, because kickers and defenses have been exiled from this draft, how dare you? I go Michael Thomas, best receiver in the league, and he'll be successful. At least 1 more year with Drew Brees is good for him. So take him, be happy.
Awesome, and we'll stay with you, Brad, as we snake back.
Oh yeah, snake. Duh.
It's all good.
Man. Well, so in this position, this is a different team, so it's not. I'm going to go back-to-back Saints, and I'm going to go Kamara because we know that he played hurt last year. Kamara's a stud. I love that guy. He's so good. The PPR game is on point. If he's healthy and he's good to go, then the sky's the limit.
So you weren't supposed to take Kamara, but you did. J-Wall, if he's watching, will be happy. Bryce is upset because he doesn't think Kamara's that good. So I'll take my boy Dalvin Cook here. I'll start this off running back, and be thrilled with that spot. Back to you, Bryce.
Who did you take, Sully? Sorry, it cut out there.
Sorry, I took Dalvin Cook.
Dalvin Cook? Okay. That's who I thought you took. All right, so the 1.7 spot. It's like one of the weirdest spots in the draft for me, as one I wouldn't want. Especially when it's redraft, I think this guy has just been so consistent throughout his career. He's a little injured last year, but I'm going to go with Devontae Adams.
Good pick. That's what I was looking at.
He's the second best receiver when he's on the field and healthy. So
my number 2 ranked wide receiver. So I would agree. I think we're killing it so far. I agree with everything thus far.
All right. I think I have 8. And I'm going to go with Joe Mixon. He hasn't been as amazing as people had hoped, I think, to this point in his career, but I feel a lot of that is based on what he's had around him. They've had a lot of injuries and just inconsistency on that offense. But with them working to improve that and what we're all hoping is better quarterback play for the Bengals here, I think that's going to open things up a bit for him. With the recent news of injuries and people leaving the team, it's starting to feel a little bit like the same old Bengals. So, I mean, if we keep getting more of that, I might be turned off more and push him down. But for now, I think he's going to get a lot of volume, and I love the position in that offense that he has.
He had a crazy year last year. Hey, like his first half was about as bad as it possibly could have been. And his second half was, I think he was one of the top 3 running backs in the second half of the season. So I agree. If they can revamp that line, like, I can't remember the gentleman's name that was injured all last year, their previous first-round pick, and it was Jonah Williams or someone like that. He's coming back, right. So I like it. Yeah. So awesome. Good pick, Craig. You can stay with you.
And with needing to start 3 receivers here, I'm going to go with another sort of old reliable. I'm going to go Julio Jones. I personally like his consistency in that offense throughout his career more than the flashiness of Tyreek Hill. And the other guy that I would have been looking at there, Derrick Henry, I think that offense in general just regresses. So in this spot, I'd be taking Julio.
I like it.
Yeah. I like that pick. I see this spot at 110. I was thinking of Derrick Henry, but when to do PPR format, I trust a guy that gets a lot of volume in a different position. I'm going to go with Hopkins here. I just think he does. He's quarterback proof, and he's not going to a very bad team. They're gonna use him. So
yeah, he's got a pretty nice quarterback that he's going to as well. Similar to what Craig had mentioned with starting 3 wide receivers, I'm going to go wide receiver here as well, and I'm going to take Tyreek Hill. I think pretty good value at pick 11 in the first round. Anytime I can get a piece of that Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes offense, I'm pretty happy. So I will take Tyreek Hill, and we'll go over to Brad for 112 and finish up the first round.
I'm pleasantly surprised that Derrick Henry fell this far. So I'll take Derrick Henry. Just signed a new contract. Should get a heavy workload this year. Should be an RB1. So I'm fine with that at the 112.
That is hard to argue.
I'm at the 201 again. So, at this point, now I'm going to jump around and take my favorite wide receiver that's still available, and that's Kenny Golladay. He is successful no matter who the quarterback is. We saw it last year, and he's going to continue to be so. He's healthy. Stafford's healthy. And when Stafford's healthy and he's healthy, big things happen. So give me Kenny G.
Derrick Henry. Fired.
Kenny G's a great pick. I was doing a little research for my podcast, and I was looking at Stafford and Galladay's Stafford's air yards and average depth of targets, and Galladay's right up there, and Stafford before his injury was right up there. So I really like that pick at the beginning of the second round. That's excellent value. I should probably go wide receiver here again, but there's a ton of running back talent on the board, and I'm going to go there and stay there. And despite news and talk, I'm going to take Miles Sanders here at 202. Foregoing a guy I really wanted to take, who I know is not coming back to me.
So you said you had him as your running back 6?
Yeah.
And you had him as the 8th one off the board, so that's good value.
It's kind of the way I'm thinking. So of the running backs that came off the board, I have Mixon at 9. I have Henry at 12. So, I have some value there. Perceived value.
Yeah.
Right. Am I up right?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Right. I'll take a guy that's going to outperform both of those guys, and you're going to disagree with me heavily. I'm going to take Aaron Jones at 203. I think when you get Barkley and Aaron Jones, you have, obviously the potential for 2 top 5 running backs, with Aaron Jones finishing second last year, and Barkley getting hurt, but I like 2 running back ones.
Did you say A.J. Dillon?
I like that. You make sure you take Sternberger on the way back and you keep going on all them Packers. I like that. That's awesome.
All right. Well, I'm going to take someone who I have slightly higher here. I have him over a couple people, but I'm going to go Kenyon Drake, and I know he's long discussed, and you either love him or hate him at this point. But with that offense, I think he's going to really have a chance to break out this year. They've had a year with Kyler in the system, and I think with him and Drake having more time together now, I think it's just going to all come together. So we'll see if I'm right. But
he's a good value for redraft.
Yeah, that was where my debate when I went Sanders was. And I guess I got to trust my own rankings. I have Sanders at 6 and Drake at 7. So
no.
What are you going to do? Splitting hairs. Yeah. All right, taking Aaron Rodgers now, Bryce?
I think Craig's up again.
I got 2-5 again here.
That's right. My apologies.
I'm not taking.
It's going to be interesting. He's someone who showed up on the injury report here recently, and there's been a whole bunch of Kareem Hunt because of it. But I'm going to go Nick Chubb. It's sort of similar to what had been discussed when I said Mixon. That offense had about everything go wrong last year that it could have. And I think they've had a year to gel and realize that they need to be more than just hype. And Chubb still had a really good season last year. So I'm taking Chubb here at 2-5.
I think that's a great pick.
Yeah, I love that. All right, my next one. So where is he at? Let's see if I can find him. Oh, okay. So this guy started off the year super hot. I think he was running back 1 until his the starter came back. So I'm going to go with Austin Eckler at 206. I think with him being the lead back there, he's going to just churn out a lot of volume.
I like it.
Yeah, and when you have questionable quarterback play, you're going to have more opportunities for him to be catching the ball, which clearly he excels at anyway. So I think that's great value.
I think his career 4.8 yards per carry is a little overlooked as well. We think of him as a pass-catching back all the time. He's not too shabby. He can get to the edge, and he's got some speed, and he's got a physique on him. I saw a couple of pictures of him on Twitter, and I was like, holy crap, the boy's put together. So I like that pick, and I like that player. So that's a good pick there, Bryce. At 207, I got a lot of different ways I can go here. And somebody has to take this guy, so I will, and I'll trust my rankings. And I will take the rookie in Kansas City, and I will take Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Brad got a smirk. He likes that.
Yeah. I think I may be the one on the RotoHeat community that's not the big CH guy. So the smirk was more Leonard Fournette was still there. So I'm surprised you didn't take him over CEH. But I don't fault you.
In a redraft format, I don't argue that at all. I just Fournette's ranked at 12 or 13 for me, I think it is, and I don't like where I have CEH at 8, but there's people who have him ranked higher than I do, so I'm trying to meet in the middle. So at 207, where I see some of the people taking him, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to skip over and not take any of those guys. I'm going to go with Allen Robinson because he's another one of the receivers that I love. I'm a big fan of him. And then at the 209, I guess you have to take a tight end at this point because Kittle and Kelsey are both on the board. I'd go Kelsey, though, just because I am concerned that with the 49ers injuries, there's just so many people that are going to be targeting Kittle and having him double and triple teamed potentially. So I know Kelsey's the safer option, and they're both amazing tight ends. So give me Kelsey at the 209.
That's hard to argue. New contract as well, so he's happy. And like I said earlier,
the 30 mark, got to be concerned once it gets 30, right?
It's true. Been healthy other than his rookie year, though. So he's been pretty much an Iron Man. He's been a beast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you took Kelsey, so I'll just keep the tight end run going here, and I will take George Kittle. Not somewhere where I would typically take a tight end, but I believe if you can get one of these two guys, it's a difference maker in your league. So I will take George Kittle and hope that he can beat triple coverage this season.
I'm up at 211. I think, it's getting to that area where it's like if you don't like any of these skill position guys, you can almost go quarterback. But there's a couple guys still I like, so I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs at 211 to pair him up with DeAndre Hopkins for this team.
I like that pick too.
Okay.
Wow. I guess, Brad kind of alluded to it, but I think Fournette here is just great value. He's another guy that's just divisive. People say, oh, he's injury prone, he can't catch, all this and that. Well, he showed last year that he's able to catch the ball and produce, and I think they're going to have to rely on him in that offense, because to me that offense is – I'm not a Minshew hater, but I wouldn't say I believe in him as much as someone like Brad does. And just being a young quarterback still, they're going to have to rely on the running game. So if I can get him at the end of the second, I am perfectly happy with him there.
Yeah, that's hard to argue him there. I think that's some pretty solid value. He is still the man in that offense. I agree. Interested to see if Chris Thompson can stay healthy for more than 2 games to take away some of those targets. And I'm also interested to see how the Jaguars use Laviska Shenault and if they line him up all over the place and even out of the backfield. So, but I will not argue Leonard Fournette at 212 at all, Craig. That's a good pick.
All right, and then 3-1 coming back around here. There's a whole bunch of wide receivers that I like here, and this probably isn't consensus, but I'm going to take Mike Evans because I feel that they're in a division where they're going to have to be throwing the ball. I know Tom Brady's there, and people are saying, oh, his arm isn't the same, but I like Mike Evans more than I like Chris Godwin, and especially with Tom Brady there. Tom Brady likes to have those big guys sort of like Gronk to throw the ball to that can go up and get a contested catch, and he hasn't had a lot of that in his career, so I think he's going to be looking to Mike Evans. So Mike Evans is my pick here.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. I misspoke earlier. I paired Jacobs with Barkley. So now you got to usually in the first 3 rounds, most people like to go, 3 skill positions with running back, wide receiver, tight end. I've got Barkley and Jacobs on this team. So I'm snaking back around. I need a wide receiver. I think I'm going to go with his teammate, Chris Godwin at 3-2. I just think he kind of fits more of that Julian Edelman, Wes Welker kind of fit that Brady, relies on several times a game.
Hard to argue either one of those 2 wide receivers. I think they're in for a pretty nice year.
Yeah.
Well, this team at 303, so I started Zeke, and then I went Tyreek, and then I went CEH. So I might as well go with Patrick Mahomes here at 303 and watch every Kansas City Chiefs game this year.
There's a lot of entertainment you're going to have there.
So, Sully, in redraft, is this where you normally look to take your quarterback if you can get one of these top-end guys, or do you usually wait longer?
In all honesty, in the redrafts that I've done, I'm just doing one now and finishing up. I have a lot of Dak Prescott because I like his value in the 7th round, 8th round more than I like Lamar and Mahomes in the 2nd round. But there's 6 quarterbacks that I believe that I want to have. And my approach is typically to take the last one. So I kind of try to wait as long as I can and play chicken with everybody else. I'll let those 5 guys go, and then I'll take that last one. So sometimes it's Kyler, sometimes it's Russell Wilson, sometimes it's Deshaun Watson. Honestly, in a 1 QB league, there's I think 28 guys I could stomach starting each week. So I typically wouldn't take Mahomes, but for the purpose of this exercise, I thought it was kind of fun. So that's what I did. Yeah, it's a good question, though.
Yeah, I typically I'm on the same boat. I typically punt on quarterback until much later, just because, especially in 1 quarterback leagues, if it's pretty typical, it's like 12-ish teams, you're going to be able to find very good value. And I typically will wait, and then I'll go around 1 to 2 rounds in a row, quarterback, at like the 10-11 or the 9-10 or or the 9-11, somewhere in there is where I kind of start jumping on them. But this would be if somebody took Mahomes and Jackson right here, I wouldn't hate on it. I'm not doing it, but I wouldn't hate on it. So I agree with you, Sully, that this is the point where you take the elites And, if you don't get the elite, then, so be it. Here, I'm going to go with Zach's probably top target. I'm going to take Mari Cooper here. I know everybody he's another one of those guys that everyone either loves or hates. I love him. I think he's just, he's very dynamic. He's elite, and they have a ton of weapons there, and that'll help take some of the pressure off of him. So I'm a big fan. And that's back to me for the 3-5. Gosh, there's so many good wide receivers here. So I guess I'll go with another good wide receiver that I like, and I'll go Cooper Kupp, because Cooper Kupp is just a stud. When you're in the first 3 rounds of a redraft, you kind of know some of the elite guys that are here. This year, some of the young guys like CH is going to slide in because of just the perfect situation. But these guys are. You're going to see these guys all go in the first 3 rounds because they're just all so good.
Yeah.
Brad, are you concerned with the emergence of Higbee in that 12 personnel offense towards the end of the season? That Kupp is going to be pushed to the outside more than playing in the slot, and that he's going to be impacted?
No, not necessarily, because I think Kupp's value is fairly insulated, just like I think Woods' value is pretty insulated. They don't, because they got rid of Brandon Cooks in the offseason, and I know they drafted Van Jefferson. Some people like him, some people don't. I think they kind of have their 2 main options at receiver, and then Everett, if you remember correctly, Everett was going bonkers before he got hurt, and then Higbee kind of became a thing. So I think those tight ends kind of cannibalize each other, and I think the wide receivers are still going to keep their value pretty solidly this season, especially because they're going to have to pass the ball. That offensive line is still in a bad spot, so it's going to be hard to run. So I'm still comfortable with both Woods and Kupp being very high-end producers.
Cool. What do you guys think of Cooper Kupp this year? Are you worried about him at all?
Go ahead, Craig.
I'm not worried at all. I was looking at him coming up here. So, out of the 2 guys, actually, out of any of the pass catchers, he's my favorite by far. And I think, the rankings generally support that. Although Woods, I think, gets underrated a lot if you look at rankings. But yeah, the tight ends, it seems like one of them's going to hit and one of them's not. And they're probably going to end up splitting weeks in some fashion. I was just surprised Branderson taking away targets from Cooper Kupp.
That's it.
That's a dig, isn't it?
Name for me. I hate Darrell Henderson. I think
I know that. Anyway, Bryce, what do you think about Kupp?
Yeah, I'm not too worried about him either. It's funny because I loved Cooper Kupp last year because he was a guy who won me my biggest DraftKings win ever because he it was one of those weeks he blew up and had 40 something points. But when he's on the field, you can definitely tell Goff targets him a lot. So as long as he stays on the field, I like it. But as Sully said earlier, he was concerned. I kind of am because it just seemed like they weren't implementing him as much later in the season as they were earlier. So until I see otherwise, I'll probably be cautious around him. So
fair enough. And for the record, I really like Cooper Kupp. I know it's just he's kind of bounced around my rankings this whole entire offseason, as I'm not really sure what Sean McVay's got up his sleeve. But and I'm the same as Brad's opinion. Gerald Everett, I was huge on him last year, and he was going guns a-blazing, and then he got hurt. So we'll see how that plays out, but I don't think you can argue with anyone at 305 for Cooper Kupp. I'm going to stay at the wide receiver position, and I'm pretty thrilled that DJ Moore has fallen to me here. I think he's got an upgrade at quarterback. I think he's got an upgrade in terms of overall offense. We'll see what they do once they get onto the field. A team that should be trailing significantly most of the season, I believe. First team in NFL history to use all of their draft picks on defense. Is that correct, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that tells you how good that defense is. So I think they're going to throw the ball a lot, and McCaffrey and DJ Moore will lead the way there. So I am thrilled to get DJ Moore in this spot.
Yeah, you took my pick here because there's a plethora of guys I have over before I take a QB. And literally, you picked Mahomes right when I would have thought, all right, I don't see anybody putting up more consistent points. And I think now is when I'm looking at my team, I've got Hopkins, Aaron Jones. I'm happy with those two positions. So I think I have to go with Lamar Jackson at the 3.7. Again, I usually am similar to you guys to where I will pass on these QBs. But if you play with especially inexperienced people, Lamar and Pat Mahomes are sometimes going in the first and second round. So I don't touch quarterbacks in those 2 rounds ever. But if they fall to me in the third, it's really hard to pass up. And I'm not going to pass up on the consistent points that Lamar was bringing last year. And if he's even 75% of that this upcoming year, I'm happy with his value at this spot.
Yeah, and when you look at ADPs, Lamar's at 22 and Mahomes is at 24. So I think that's cuckoo. But at the same time, how do you fault taking Lamar Jackson, who is very, the majority of folks' number one quarterback in all formats at mid to back of third round when he's sometimes going first round, like you said. So totally agree with that.
All right. I'm taking the guy that he usually shows up on these underrated lists, but somehow to me he still feels underrated because just year in and year out he produces. And I'm going to go Keenan Allen here. I know that there's questions abound with how they're going about quarterback and the LA Chargers here, but Keenan's a guy that, last year, and I know Rivers was there at that time, but he was a top 10 guy last year in PPR, and he just produces year in and year out, but still flies under the radar somehow. So with a quarterback situation in question, with him being really the proven pass catcher there and the wide receiver core, I love getting him in the back half of the third. All right. And then I got one more here. And I'm going to take a guy that I'm not that high on, but I think compared to where I've seen him go in a lot of redrafts here this year, and community is higher on him than I am, I'm going to take Juju Smith-Schuster from Pittsburgh. I personally have a lot of questions still about that wide receiver core in Pittsburgh. What's Ben going to look like coming back? Because there's been mixed reports of him already, and however long it takes him to come back, if he does, he's coming back from some serious stuff in his arm, which is concerning to me. And Juju played well without Antonio Brown at times, but there isn't anyone else really proven in that pass-catching core either. I know there's a lot of people high on Deontay Johnson. I personally like James Washington a little bit more than him, and they invested in wide receiver again this year, but it's sort of like Juju and not a whole lot else. So I have concerns about whether he's going to put up the kind of numbers that a lot of people are projecting him to. But towards the end of the third, I'll take him.
100%. This guy definitely has more redraft value than he does dynasty. It's a guy that you look up to right before you draft him to make sure he's not hurt. And it's Todd Gurley. I just think in that high-powered offense.
Nice pick.
Yeah, in that high-powered offense, he's got a lot of opportunity for touchdown upside, and they're going to feed him the ball because there's nobody else to run it there. So I'll take him all day in the late third.
Well, that was my guy, so I'm going to need to talk amongst yourselves for a second here.
It's getting rough. It's getting to where you can now pick people that are so far different in their ADP. It's a real bad night.
And I think this is sort of, if when you're drafting, it's important to go into this with your own plan and your own list of guys, because this is where ADP can get a little ugly and a little misleading to your point, and it can take you down a path you're not necessarily going to want to go. I'm going to take a running back here, and I was going to take Gurley, but I'm going to take another running back that I feel is got a little injury history to himself that is rather overlooked entering this season, and I'm going to take James Conner of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
That one caught me off guard.
I thought you were going to say Chris Carson.
I thought about him, but I'm a little bit more confident, and I even thought David Johnson.
I better say Melvin Gordon, to be honest.
It's probably the fourth guy on that list. I don't want to upset Brad. He's a guest.
I'll take Melvin Gordon's teammate Cortland Sutton at the 312 because he's actually valuable. So,
you like
yeah, I'm not a big Gordon fan. I think Phillip Lindsay's still the best back on that team, and they pay Gordon, but Lindsay's a hard worker, and he's shown and proven that he can be successful. So Gordon gets hurt a lot. Is kind of a banger, basically between the tackles type guy, and I'm not as high on. So, but Cortland Sutton, on the other hand, the guy I did draft, is a stud. He seems to be very quarterback insulated as he's continued to develop, and obviously Drew Lock likes him because he's got a big catch radius and he's a big play receiver. So Sutton is a nice wide receiver one, especially this year as well.
Any concern of Sutton's target share decreasing when Locke took over and seemed to lock in, no pun intended, on Noah Fant?
No, I mean, because you saw even with him targeting Noah Fant a little bit more, Sutton was still getting his. He was still a wide receiver one and consistently giving you points on a weekly basis. So, I think adding more pieces, so it's either going to help or hurt. It's either going to cause Luck to have to try to figure out how to put his playmakers in the best position to be successful, or he's going to get it and be able to spread the ball well, and Judy will get his and Fant should get some. I mean, this team should be behind because their defense is not great. I mean, it's got some big names, but some of those big names are either hurt a lot or old, and so they're going to be throwing the ball.
I like that offense a lot, and I like Pat Shurmur as an offensive coordinator. And back to Gordon real quick, Shurmur tends to like his one guy. So if Philip Lindsay does emerge as the better guy, I can see Gordon getting pushed to the side, paid or not. I do think Gordon, because of the fact that he got that big bag of money, is going to get the first crack at it. So it'll be interesting to see where that ends up. All right, well, you guys were really good and really fast, and you just banged out 3 rounds like nothing. So, Kraig, take a look at the draft board. Which pick is your favorite, and which pick do you not like that much, excluding your own?
Excluding my own, all right. I guess I'll go with the pick that I like the least. I mean, I'll go with Mahomes. You could take Jackson, but either one of them, just because, kind of like you guys discussed, I'm not taking a quarterback that high in a one quarterback league. Value-wise, I don't think it's there, and it's hard to peg if there is that one guy who's going to blow the competition out of the water like we've seen the past couple of years. It really isn't consistently the same guy. So that's probably the pick that I like the least, is taking the quarterback there. Value-wise, honestly, I think Todd Gurley is a really good value at the end of the 3rd round there. He does have concerns, but if he is over or if he's more motivated, whatever the case was last year that caused him problems with the team that he was on, he is, in my mind, probably going to be in a better offense than what they had there, just because of the inconsistencies that the Rams had last year, and the Falcons, if nothing else, can put up points year in and year out. And with the other teams in that division, he's going to get plenty of opportunities to catch passes too. And they got better receivers there, in my opinion. Julio and Ridley are better than what he had for receivers with the Rams. So I really like the pick.
I have no argument there at all. I think that's true with Gurley. If they throw him the football, the Rams just stopped throwing him the football last year for whatever reason. The Falcons will. So I gotta just say Atlanta. Brad, what's your least favorite, most favorite?
It's tough when you're in the first few rounds of a draft. I mean, you're drafting all the high end talent. So I mean, it's hard to hate on any of these picks. I mean, I guess probably my own picks would be the ones I would hate the most.
You're not allowed to do that.
Well, because so this is me drafting the guys that I like in all these positions. But if you're concerned about injury history or injuries that came from before, Alvin Kamara at the 1.5 could be dangerous for you if he continues to keep getting hurt. That's not a good value for him. If he's healthy and good to go, then the sky's the limit. So I mean, so that's one of those where, okay, you at this point in your draft, you really have to hit hard because these have to be the foundational pieces of your team. So either your Cook or my Kamara are two that I'm like, man, I'd love to see those more like the 110 to 112s, but they're not going to go there. I mean, they'll go way before that. I mean, that's I'm just saying that's kind of where I value him at because, think of the guys that went after him, like Tyreek Hill's very solid value. DeAndre Hopkins was very solid value. Those guys are consistent. They stay healthy. They're target hogs. All the things you can think of. So, the running backs are my two, the 1.5, 1.6, just because they just don't, they could potentially not be worth what you're going to pay for them. But I don't hate any of these picks. They're all good picks.
That's fair. Bryce, you got a favorite and a not so much favorite?
Yeah, they're actually both from Kraig. So my least favorite is definitely Nick Chubb. I think in several of our episodes, I talked about why I don't like Nick Chubb's value. Even though getting him at the 205 is probably later than most leagues you're going to see, I still just think there's a lot of people behind that got drafted that I think are going to outproduce him just only because of the presence of Kareem Hunt. If he's not there, I think his value is great. And Craig's pick that I loved is Leonard Fournette. I was debating on taking Leonard Fournette over Aaron Jones, and he went nine picks after him. So I definitely think Leonard Fournette's value right there. Yeah, okay, funny. I know he's going to be your lead.
I'll get to that. We'll get there.
But I just think Leonard Fournette, because last year I was all over him because of the talk of him getting involved in the pass game, and he did. And I think it's going to be more of the same this upcoming year. All the offense has, and he's going to get a ton of touches. He just doesn't have much touchdown upside. Is the only unfortunate thing. So,
it's fair.
Go ahead, Sully.
All right, so my least favorite pick is Aaron Jones. For those of you loyal Fantasy Inferno live stream and podcast listeners, I believe he's in for a massive regression year this year. He's not going to score 19 touchdowns again. He's not going to perform in the passing game as long as Devonta Adams stays healthy. Yeah. It's a broken record that I've gone over this a number of times that Jones took off and excelled when Adams was out of the lineup, and he's the only guy that I've ever seen finish as the number 2 running back in fantasy that had 5 games under 10 fantasy points in a season. So I think he regresses big time. So I don't like that pick. I'd like it about a round later, but I understand why you would make that pick. And I think my favorite pick is Allen Robinson at 208, being the consistent number 1 wide receiver that he is, potentially with a bit of an increase in caliber of quarterback. A lot of talk coming out of the Bears camp, and again, to Craig's point earlier about a salt shaker amount of grain of salt, that Trubisky looks great. And maybe Mitch just needed a real legit motivator to get him going, and that is Nick Foles. But Allen Robinson is quarterback proof. To do what he has done with Blake Bortles and Mitch Trubisky is outstanding. So happily would be thrilled with him at 208. So awesome. We got anything going on over on Facebook, Bryce? Is there any questions or activity or action going on?
Got one comment. I'm trying to pull it up. Oh, nope. It says Brad saying welcome back all.
Brad's a very polite young man. So over on YouTube, we have I don't even know how to deal with this, but Rick Butts has got $5 on the table to make Brad dance. So he's donated $5 to make him dance. He claims that Brad doesn't listen very well, but I need to make him dance.
Oh, God.
Rick also doesn't...
I do the Running Man, but I'm sitting down. And I do the Truffle Shuffle, but I don't want to do that.
That was awesome. Cool. Well, I don't know what to do. We're kind of done. But so I'm just going to ask you guys really quickly, from a redraft standpoint, or I guess it could be any kind of drafting. Do you guys go into your draft with a plan on how to draft? So do you go into it thinking, I want to go RB to start off with, or any 0 RB strategies, or do you just best player available it? Brad, what do you do going into these drafts? We got that IBL draft coming up. It's a redraft league. How are you going to attack that?
No, I don't. I really don't. When it comes to redraft, no, because I typically am in redrafts with guys that I'm familiar with, so I kind of know what they do. Or this IBL draft where I know if I don't like what happened, I just trade into somebody else's draft and get the guys I want. So I tend to just let the board set itself, and I kind of go with, and I pick, like we did here, I tend to just pick the guys that I want on my team, guys I think are going to be consistent producers, or, I tend to not take big risks. when it comes to taking so I wouldn't have done rookies in the second round because especially in this year, I don't know what to expect from the rookie class because of COVID and not getting up to speed quickly and all that stuff. So I let the board set itself, and I really do kind of watch for guys to make mistakes, and then I capitalize on their mistakes. So I've seen plenty of redrafts where guys would let a nice RB1 fall because nobody's high on him. Like Leonard Fournette would be a guy that slides every year, it seems like, and I'll swoop him up because if he's healthy, he's a stud. If he's not healthy, well, then I've wasted the pick. But more often than not, when he's on the field, he's producing nicely. So, that's kind of how I go into it. No, I don't come in with a board. Although shameless plug, I will go to rotoheat.com and look at the redraft rankings to see what the consensus is amongst the team because I do value the opinion. So,
I like it. Awesome, Bryce. Any strategies, or you just kind of have at her while you go?
Yeah, well, it's like you kind of have a strategy, but usually, especially when you play redraft, the people I play with, you're going to see just so many anomalies, especially when the quarterbacks are going to get taken in the first round. I guarantee I have a redraft coming up in a week, I believe, and I bet Pat Mahomes and Lamar Jackson will be gone in the first 15 picks. I can almost guarantee it. But my strategy for sure is to bolster the middle, which is like the running backs and the wide receivers. I almost always take a flyer on QBs and tight ends because I'll take some guys late that will put up good value for their spot. But like Brad said, it's more of like you gotta wait for people to make mistakes because there's going to be running back ones that are going to fall, and it's going to be guys like Kenyon Drake, Austin Eckler, and I had one more. Kenyon Drake, Austin Eckler, and I can't think. Oh, Leonard Fournette, like you said earlier. I just think those are guys that people are going to overlook because of maybe the situation or they haven't done it consistently. And it's like you don't want to buy players like that too early because you almost might get a steal with it the next round. So with you guys, it's hard to get things like that to happen because you do your research and you pay attention a lot. But when you play with guys in redraft, which a lot of times we do with our friends we knew growing up or family members and things like that, they don't see true value of players. So I think it's keeping an eye on who you want and make sure you don't take them too early.
Cool. So. Craig, same question for you. Anything?
I usually try to have some sort of an idea of what I'd want to do in the first two rounds because those I feel you can probably somewhat sort of plan. And a lot of that is based off of, like the other guy said, know your league. It's one of the biggest things that we preach on the IDP show because everything gets a lot crazier with that. But just know your league, your setup, and then who you're drafting with. That's who you're drafting with. A lot of times you're even going to see crazier stuff, and we have 3 rounds, and it wasn't going to happen with us anyway. But round 7, I'll start seeing kickers and defenses go for some of these guys that I got to fill all my starters first. And take advantage of it, like Bryce said. If someone's going to do that, let them. Don't try to trick them out of it or something. Just let the cards fall and then take advantage of it. So I think it's a lot more of a play as I go off the board and what other people are doing in redraft.
Gotcha. And a total IDP, no clue what I'm talking about question. Is there a certain point in your drafts, and I guess it's dependent upon how your scoring is set up, but when you start to see those first defensive players coming off the boards in your drafts?
It's uncommon to see a redraft IDP league. They're out there, but they're much less uncommon. But any sort of draft like that, if it's the same sort of basic setup like we have here for offense, and then 2 D-backs, 2 D linemen, 2 linebackers, you're probably going to see the top end talent go round 8-ish from what I've seen when they start to have more of those lineups get filled on the offense with the top tier talent go down. You're usually not seeing scoring that's 1-to-1. You're usually going to see like your top defensive players somewhere around scoring half of what your top offensive players do. Okay. So
cool. Well, the good news is everyone watching this evening is like, subscribe, and click that notification bell. So Monday nights, let's get into it and tune in with me and watch the talented IDP Heat Seekers on Monday nights. So one last redraft question for you. Sorry, while I still have my voice. Typically, I will only draft 1 quarterback and 1 tight end, and I usually play redraft leagues that are between 15 and 16 rounds. I'm wondering this year, with clearly some concerns about late minute additions, late minute scratches and things due to COVID. Do you guys have any interest in a redraft league to add a second tight end or a quarterback to your roster in case that happens, or are you just going to go to the wire when that happens?
Wire.
I usually take a flyer on tight end anyway, so if I take one and I see another guy that has the potential, like last year, I think a lot of times my second tight end I drafted ended up being Darren Waller. So
Well done.
I'll probably he's my guy. Blake Jarwin's my guy this year that I think is going to impress a lot of people. But I'm hoping like I can get a tight end I know that's going to produce, and then maybe add Blake Jarwin later on. But I usually do that only because I take a flyer on the tight end. So hopefully I'm just gambling at that point, hoping one of them hits.
That's fair. Kraig, any thoughts of COVID concerns?
Yeah, I mean, my only comment on that is you have to have, in my mind, even for redraft, some sort of expanded rosters. And I know there's people that like to stick to a hard line of, nope, if your stud gets it, you have to keep them on the bench or drop them. And to me, I mean, that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially if you're playing with friends and people from work, why you would take that sort of just hardline stance to try to make enemies. But I usually take 2 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends on my redraft teams, even. That way I have 2 guys that I like. Or if my quarterback gets hurt, I'm not having to pick the wire for someone who I really don't care for.
That's fair. I think you're right about expanded rosters, and I also think it's important more so than ever, and especially in redraft with typically smaller rosters, is that you have Sunday ads activated in all of your leagues. So when your guys are last minute scratches, you have the ability for the guys in your league to go to the wire and add someone, because 1 point is better than no points. And like you said, this is supposed to be fun after all. So to make it incredibly difficult for you to enjoy your Sunday isn't what I like to do. So awesome. That's pretty much done it, guys. I really appreciate you being here. So thanks so much again to Brad and to Kraig, especially, and Bryce as always. Brad, why don't you tell the fine folks, the listeners and the viewers, where they can find you, my friend?
Everywhere. You can find me in the Discord group. You can find me in the Facebook group, at RotoHeat Brad on Twitter. That's probably the main places. You can find me on Call of Duty if you guys play on Call of Duty. I jump on there and mess around. Oh, you find me anywhere. It seems like when we do Call of Duty, somebody wants to talk fantasy football. Unless Rick's playing with us, because Rick doesn't want to do that.
No, not at all.
Awesome. And Kraig, you IDP genius, where can we all find you?
Twitter, at RotoHeat Kraig. Discord, I'm very active if you need something there. Facebook, if you have a question, I have no problem helping out, but please tag me, because I don't go on Facebook a whole lot, and I don't go surfing around because of just all the unnecessary drama Facebook seems to bring for the most part. So if you tag me, I'll see it. If it's a random question, I probably won't. So if you want my input, tag me and let me know.
Yeah, there was a really good post earlier. I think it was today. And I was reading it, and it was a kind of a question about how my roster is and should I blow this up. And it was an IDP league, and I'm like, oh crap. So I looked at it, I looked at the offensive, and kind of made up my mind. But then I tagged you, Kraig, and you jumped in and saved the day. So thanks for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
And my friend Bryce.
All these guys have more social media than me. You can
young
just
guy with no social media.
Right. You could just find me on Facebook and then the Discord. And again, it's free to join that Discord. Just again, I'm usually on there always putting my little bit of input just on posts, trades, things like that. I'm on Facebook quite a bit, especially on the RotoHeat one. I'm always just browsing around. And then the Discord, I'm pretty much in there, just at least looking at everything. Might not be as vocal, but if you ever want to talk to me, just message me privately or tag me in anything as well.
Awesome. And you can find me on Twitter at RotoHeat Sully. I'm in also the Facebook communities and Discord, and kind of made a promise to myself that I'm going to be a little bit more active in our redraft group on Discord. Discord's awesome, guys. Dynasty, redraft, IDP, Debbie's in there. Brad alluded to Call of Duty. My phone blows up on a nightly basis, and I think there's some really cool stuff happening in the world of fantasy football, but it's just a whole bunch of cool happening in the world of COD, which is also kind of neat. But Discord's a great thing to be in. So like Bryce said, it's free. Get on over there. And I also I host a solo podcast. It's called Sully's 2 Cents. I'm currently planning on episode 100, what I'm going to do for that. And it is sadly starting to look like it might be 100 fantasy thoughts. So we'll see what that looks like. But on behalf of my talented co-hosts and special guests, thank you so much for being here. We are back next Wednesday night, 9:30 Eastern time. I do not know what the topic is because I forgot to look into what the topic is next week. But it'll be a redraft show. And if these two fine defensive specialists want to come back, they're more than welcome. But I do believe we'll have our regular host, Rob Silvers, back in the saddle. So until then, thanks for being here. Remember, like, subscribe, click that notification bell, leave us a rating and review. We greatly appreciate it. Have a good night. Thank you.
Don't forget, make sure you hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any more fantasy football content from the RotoHeat.com team. Also, right there, playlist. Hit it. Watch the videos. Do it.